Hey everybody, welcome back to the Combat Chain. I'm your host Patrick Shaw, and with me as always is my stalwart co-host Adam Philipchuk. Adam, how are you doing?
Doing good, Pat. It's good to be back. How are you?
I am doing, I'm doing. It's a day. I'm a dad. I'm busy. Work is work. I feel like I'm burning the candle a little bit on both ends, trying to get some fab in lately, so definitely can feel it. I bet you're feeling it a little bit. We have not had a chance to talk about the fact that you went to Las Vegas and participated in the world premiere event.
Yeah, last time we spoke on this platform, it was the Wednesday before the world premiere. I was in Vegas at the time, kind of hunkering down, getting ready for things to kick off. It was a great time. Glad to be back since then. Played on a bunch of pre-releases, got to hit up 4 pre-releases back in my local scene. So I was pretty lucky with that, just to have that much action going on.
Yeah, did you say 4 pre-releases?
Yeah, if you think I've played between Vegas and pre-release, I've played Uprising Limited 6 times now, I think, already.
You don't even need to buy the singles. You're just good to go at this point.
I've got a decent stack of commons and rares at this point, starting to accumulate some M's. Definitely, I did not pull a single. Oh geez. How many packs in am I? I'll do the math while you're chatting there in a little bit, and we'll get back to that. But anyway, I haven't pulled a single L, so it is what it is. I've seen L's pulled like right next to me. I've seen an F. A dude like in my last pre-release, a dude pulled in his pool the cold foil. So I can even though the website says that cold foil coronet doesn't exist, I can confirm it does. I've seen it. That is an error on LSS's part that they have to update. So a dude pulled the cold foil coronet. I think I'm saying that right, and an RF Blood of the Drakai in his pool. So there's been a lot of fire near and around me, but I have yet to see some of that fire. Well, I guess that's not totally true. I guess the notable hits. I have cold foil Quelling Robe, one of the cold foil ashes, not the Marvel one, just the regular one, and I pulled a cold foil Marvel of the Necria dragon.
Excellent, that's a spicy one. I like the art on the extended art on the Marvel Necria.
The cold foil is pretty spicy for that one, so that's pretty cool.
So tell me more about Vegas. So when we talked, like you said, you were there, you were just getting acclimated, and then tell me about the world premiere event itself.
World premiere was super cool. To get a chance to sit down firsthand, start playing with some of the cards, seeing some of the new mechanics, feeling things out. It's one thing for me at least, it's one thing to read the card, it's another thing to play with the cards. Certainly, as the more I play this game, my ability to pick up the game is speeding up. Like I noticed I felt a lot less overwhelmed this time than I did at the Tales world premiere. Certainly a lot of like the weird damage triggers in that set certainly had me feeling a little in over my head at first. There was a moment there I was like, man, this is so confusing now. I don't know if I like Flesh and Blood anymore. And then, after a little bit of repetition, it was fine.
Ball lightning does what with arcane?
Mark of Lightning with ball lightning does what times what? It was painful.
Mm-hmm.
But I played Icelander at the world premiere. I had a decent pool of blues. Was able to go 4-2.
Not
With
bad.
yeah, it was decent. The game, I had one game into a FI where I just had no agency. I couldn't get my fuse card, and that's one thing. Like Iceland, I have found so far, Icelander is easier to pull off in limited than I expected her to be. But
Mm-hmm.
you do need the fuse cards and you do need the blues.
Yeah.
Like that's the
Yeah.
reality. And in that game, I think I even won the dice roll and uh, got to go first, but I didn't hit the cards I needed off the draw. Didn't get an impactful
Mm-hmm.
arsenal right off the bat. Couldn't fuse, and it just he ran away with the game pretty quickly. And then near the end, I had a interesting experience into a Dromai. When I say interesting, I had an unfortunate judge call. I was playing a card called Strategic Planning, and strategic planning reads at the beginning of your end step you may draw a card or draw a card. I don't know if it's a may trigger. Anyway, and so I went to draw the card, and then I went to arsenal said card because, like I said, it's at the beginning of end step is the trigger, and immediately the opponent was like, "Let me see that card." Nope, that's wrong, judge. And the judge came over and read the card, and that my opponent explained the situation, and the judge was like, "Yeah, you've missed your opportunity to arsenal this." I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, this clearly
Blah, blah,
says
blah.
this clearly says at the beginning of end step. Arsenaling happens during the end step. Like, I said those exact things to the judge. I'm like, am I missing something here? And the judge went and pulled up the comprehensive rules and like quickly flashed them in front of me. Like the thing where it was actually funny because like after that interaction, I was so dumbfounded at the time. I'd never been in a judge call where like it had gone wrong like that before. The correct thing that I was supposed to do at the time was actually appeal. Now, thankfully, it wasn't a competitive event. It was a casual event. Like maybe at most I missed out of a pack of. I'd already lost a game at that point, so I wasn't in the running for a box. And at most I lost out of a pack, being maybe 5-1. So it's not the end of the world in a casual event. But I was so dumbfounded at the time that I was like, is this happening? Like, am I mistaken? And I didn't appeal like I should have. And yeah, I ended up doing all this research afterwards. I looked at the release notes, and sure enough, the release notes, even for strategic planning, say like talk about the card drawn and how you may arsenal it. And I went and looked at the comprehensive rules that he flashed at me, which clearly show that I was able to arsenal that card. And I was, yeah. There was a lot of interesting judge calls that came out of Vegas. I know, shout out to Outcast Haven pod. They talked about this too. Like there was some interesting judge calls. Two more that I really want to talk about are there was two people that I know of that were playing Kano and had Eyes of Ophidia in their deck, and they got deck checked. One I think was in the top 4. The other one I'm not certain if they were in why they got deck checked, but because of the Eye being the only foil in the deck, they ended up getting disqualified from the events for having marked cards. And once again, it's like, well, that card's only available in foil. What else are you supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which, after looking into things a little bit, and the correct thing to do again is to, at the beginning, if you're concerned about a potential marked card in your deck, and especially if it's one that's not available in non-foil, like a Fable, I is played in Kano. That's a reality. the play is to go at the beginning of the event and see, try to see the head judge or a judge at the minimum from the event, and talk to them about this, and they should be able to issue you a proxy. Like I said, especially if it's a card that's only available in foil.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Are they saying that because the eye was a foil, it was easily identified in the deck and thus a marked card? Or are they saying now that if you have one foil amongst 39 non-foils, you have a marked card no matter what?
No, they were saying in this case that these cards were easily identifiable, and that was the issue. They were able to, I guess in that particular situation, they were able to cut to the card multiple times, or within like the one situation that Outcast Haven had specifically spoken about was, and they had actually they were able to cite their sources, and they had actually done the right digging on this one. They had found out that the interaction between the judge and the player in question was the judge had cut the deck multiple times, and each time was able to cut within like 3 or 5 cards of the fable, and thus was always able to find the fable within a couple cards. Now, apparently in the rules, it states that if you're able to cut, if you can cut to that card repeatedly with ease, then it's of concern. But it doesn't state being able to cut to within a couple cards of the card. Like, there's a difference. Mm-hmm. So disqualifying them immediately for
the disqualification seems a little heavy, but I guess it's I did not listen to Outcast Haven's podcast yet, but I have seen some conversation since Vegas about rules infractions and judge calls, and then the marked card conversation. I believe it's because there's a single foil in the deck that is clearly a marked card. There is no other way to look at it as anything other than like a pattern in which to identify it. So by like the rules of the marked cards in Flesh and Blood, it's considered an automatic disqualification, like above a normal marked card scenario where you might get a warning and like re-sleeve.
Yeah, that's exactly what it comes down to. And even like in the case that Outcast Haven was talking about, like I guess the interaction between the judge and the player was that even the judge was like, I know you're not trying to be malicious, but this is just what the rules state I have to do. Like, you're unfortunately disqualified. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
Which then Outcast Haven, they did talk about the idea of like, how much agency do the judges have? Like, are the judges held to the letter of the law, or is there room for interpretation? Like, there's a lot of the rules in Flesh and Blood talk about a lot of things have to be assumed that they were done in goodwill, like that.
Right.
People aren't deliberately trying to be malicious, but then the rules are very exact about like, well, if this is what happened, then you have to give them an IP penalty, or you have to disqualify them without like room for consideration, or you can't factor in what's you have to follow the letter of the law. And that part's like a little bit like, well, I think there is some times where judges should be allowed to use their discretion as well. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I do think I know that LSS just recently released an updated ruling judge competition enforcement level guide that allows for different tiers. There I believe there's casual, kind competitive and then professional level enforcement at this point. And at the casual level, it does have language now that says that I believe TOs and judges at the casual level can act within the spirit of the competition as opposed to the letter of the law. And I think that's something that, especially in a situation like that, people would have to consider there, right? Like, is the spirit of the competition that of just forcing people to be DQ'd over a non-malicious thing that, and honestly, like, we've all been there, right? We all have foils in our decks. It's like one of the things, right? Especially if you have that fabled, it's there. It can't, like,
well, I mean, I was playing Kano that weekend in the Team Blitz event. I had an eye in my deck. The eye was the only foil in my deck. If I had gotten judge called based off of the trend that weekend, our team would have been disqualified.
Now, do you feel like you would have been able to catch the foil?
For the most part, no. Every once in a while, like I'll be shuffling or cutting it, and like I'll draw a card, and it'll be like, before I go to draw it, I'll like feel it in my hand, and I'll be like, oh shoot, that's the eye. And then sure enough, like I'll look at it and it's the eye. And from now on, I am gonna go, like, if next time I'm in an event, if I'm playing eye, I'm gonna go see the head judge, and just like nip it in the butt and be like, hey, I need a proxy for this, because like I said, they do have to accommodate that, because it's there's no non-foil equivalent. If there's a non-foil equivalent and it's an issue, then you have to go get the non-foil equivalent. But yeah, in that case, because
you're gonna have to get your Black Label history foreign language versions of Fabled.
Did I tell you? Did I tell you? Because I know it's being printed in German. Is it in all foreign languages?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I mean, not all. I mean, there's a lot of foreign languages.
No. Sorry, let me rephrase my question. Are all the foreign language prints getting Fables? Or is that just German? Do we know, like, it's all the languages?
It is... oh boy.
Because
it is German, Spanish, French, Italian, and Japanese.
So, but it is sorry, maybe I need to give more context here. I saw Louis made a post on Twitter about the German printing of Black Label History Pack 1, we know for sure has the fable in it, or has the 3 fables in it, I believe. The 3 being Heart, Eye, and I assume Shard. And their foil.
Yeah, I think it's a safe assumption.
And their foil. So what I'm asking is, do we know for sure that every language has the fables in them?
On FabDB, the fable for both the Heart and now the Eye that I'm looking at has a listing for the English, German, Spanish, French, Italian,
so exciting,
Japanese version.
So the part of the reason I'm asking about this, so I made a spicy pre-order for while I'm in Lille, in France. I'm actually going to an LGS I pre-ordered LGS down there in France, in just outside of Paris. I pre-ordered there some Black Label French history pack that I'm gonna pick up while I'm there, and I'm very excited for it. I want all the, I want a playset of, I would love to try to get a playset of a full playset of French history pack, the full set.
Sure.
I only have a case right now, but the price just went down, so I might actually order a little bit more. We'll see here. Or I'm trying to decide if I want to save that money and just try to like crack whatever I get, and then fill out the rest with singles while I'm there. Maybe is maybe the plan. We'll see. We'll see what we get and how far we can get with that.
I am very interested in foreign fables if they're printed in greater quantities and are cheaper
Yeah,
than their current English versions. I
knowing that
will.
the fable is in that set makes me even more excited, or that those fables, not the fables. It makes me very excited.
There are, I believe, there's going to be country specific special cards as
I
well,
know.
and
I'm
I
so
think
excited for
that
that.
post referenced a special version of Viscerai in German.
I wonder if the
That
product
got it.
sheet's out yet for the French one.
That definitely got some of our Runeblade enthusiast friends fired up to see that there might be an alt Viscerai coming their way.
Anyway, we went on a tangent there. Vegas, the premiere, was a heck
Vegas
of a time.
premiere. You went
We are
4-2 in the premiere.
4-2 in the
Is that what we're
premiere.
saying?
Had a heck of a time with Icelander. We are going to get more into the heroes a little bit later, so I'm not gonna. That's when I'll kind of talk a little bit more about my deck and kind of my findings playing Icelander. But then after that, yeah, I played in the Team Blitz event. Played with Oliver Chen and Christopher Eng. Oliver Chen, a top eighter at Canadian Nationals last year, heck of a player, and Christopher Eng, a heck of a player as well. We ended up going 4-2-1, so essentially 4-3 in the day one. So just barely missed it,
man.
The cut for day two. So that was a bit of a bummer.
These draws, man, it's killer.
Yeah, it just came down to we had Oliver was on Oldhim, and they're some of the matches would go long.
Sure. That effing deck, God, it just
and
slows
Oliver
the
went
world
on
down.
He leaned on the fatigue side of things. He's a pretty good fatigue player. So that unfortunately, we just
do.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I no, he played a hell. He played very well all weekend. But yeah, so we just barely missed the cut for day two, unfortunately.
How did you feel about the team aspect of the calling there? Is that how?
Oh, it was a blast.
How Blitz should be played? If you have a Blitz calling,
I don't know if it's the end all be all way to play. I would love to see some team limited events. I think that would be a lot of fun. Team sealed is a lot of fun. I've played team sealed a couple times now with Flesh and Blood.
Sounds like it would be super dangerous.
And even what actually was super cool, they are doing a team sealed event for History Pack in calling Utrecht, I believe.
Ooh,
I think
very
it's
exciting. I believe so.
They're it's like the team, you get like an obscene amount of packs that you can open to make like whatever hero from that pool. I think they're all token heroes. So
now that you mention it, I believe there is news, right? U.S. release of Flesh and Blood has been delayed a week. So the official release is now July 1. There's events that were taking place that weekend, of the release weekend, that was intended to be classic constructed in the new meta. But I believe that two things are going to happen. There's a 10K in Ohio, I believe it is. I'm probably butchering the geography of that, but it is a very high profile event. I know Brendan Pratchett's going to be there. Dalen Mack is going to be there. It is growing in numbers. It is getting to be a high profile event. And it will feature both No Uprising and Living Legend, Starvo, and Chain they'll be out. So for like one day only, you'll get this exact meta of no Starvo, no Chain, but before Uprising.
So did they specifically say that you're not allowed to bring an Uprising hero then? Or is it just that
I think that as far as I know, the official U.S. release is July 1, which means no legal cards or no cards from
Oh,
Uprising will be legal until then.
in
I do
a
know that
US event then.
you cannot draft Uprising as an official event before July 1.
Just in the US then.
Potentially, yeah. I don't know. How's Canada with their release?
Because
Are they on time?
as far as I know, it's on time. Like my local LGS is like they already. I think one of them already like got their shipment or is like getting it tomorrow or today or tomorrow or something like that. Like as far as I know, we got it all on time.
That 10K is being held at the Realms game. The
Like,
Realms.
can I
The
just
Realm
show up with
games.
Fi and sweep? Spike the event?
That would be super gross. And there might be an argument against that. That'd be an interesting thing if that happens.
I'm not suggesting that that's like that could be an unfair advantage at that point. I'm not saying that that's the play. I'm just wondering like what the ruling was, if that is even a possibility.
That is
sorry. I'm asking the tough questions over here.
You are. The Realm Games Twitter says we've heard the unfortunate news about the delay of Uprising. We are assessing all the needed announcements and changes needed for the 10K Brawl Classic so people can adequately prepare their decks. We will post on all socials as soon as possible, letting people know everything. You can still pre-register. They follow up. The 10K Brawl will be CC as planned. Uprising will not be legal. But the 5K Team Blitz event that was also scheduled that weekend will now be an Uprising Team Sealed event for that day. I do believe that Tan and Grace and Matt Matt Flake will be they will definitely be there, as well as the Flesh Pod crew. But I do believe there's going to be some streaming, and I do believe Tannen and Flake might be involved in the casting of that event. So it is lining up to be a pretty big deal. But you'll see Team Uprising Sealed in that event coming up here.
All right, that's super. That's going to be a good one to tune into.
It's definitely interesting.
Regardless of whether Uprising cards are allowed at all or not, just to see that little blip of like the meta everybody wishes we could have played in, to just see a blip of it, and just to see what comes of it is going to be super interesting.
All right, lightning round. You have a 1-day meta. What top 3 decks coming in?
Like that meta?
Yep, that exact. The Realm Games in Ohio 10K, 1 day only.
I mean,
everything before Uprising minus.
It's going to be likely an aggro deck or a fatigue deck. That takes it.
You gonna sit on the fence like that? You gonna give me some names.
Well, I mean, like what's let me think. What's good aggro? Dash could be okay. Kano could be good. Actually, Kano. Kano. Because
Kano's very interesting.
So the Battle Harden on the Sunday of Vegas, I decided to play Kano because I had this theory that out of ProQuest, since Kano didn't do anything, no one would be ready for Kano. And sure enough, so I didn't do well in the Battle Harden, unfortunately. But in my first 2 rounds, I like the rounds that matter, right? That you really need to pull it through. Well, I mean, like in the way that Battle Harden boiled down, like you could really only afford to go X and 1 to top 8, so every round truly mattered. But in my first 2 rounds, I flipped over Kano, and both my opponents were like, I just cut my null rune. Like they're like, I'm not worried about Kano anymore again. And like,
yep.
And
you gotta respect it. I don't know how honestly, I know I'm cutting you off there. I don't know how you so quick. The memories cannot be that short term. You have to. What Kano did, if you do it right, is cut their sideboard by like three cards across the board. If you didn't take a couple cards out and add a couple more pieces of Null Rune, you're doing it wrong, brothers.
Well, and here's the thing I'll say. The little hint I'll give for playing into Kano, because people still don't know what they're doing into Kano, I've found. If you are going all out aggro, you do not want Null Rune. Like, if I can get tempo you out and like start getting you to a point where you need to pitch like on a regular basis to prevent you're an aggro deck, like you're probably redline, like the amount of cards you're pitching to prevent that arcane, like I'm so happy to see that Ice Kano, because now you're like doing half the stuff on your turn. Like you're not, if you get to that point as an aggro deck, you're already losing the game. So how do you feel as Kano if that aggro player flips over Spell Void 3? You know. That is exactly what I was gonna say.
So this ended up being spicy Briar tech way back in the day, right? Lightning Briar Blitz in Skirmish Season 2, pioneered by Hayden Dale, was at least publicized the list. But Shock Charmer, Spellfray Cloak, and Spellfray Leggings, Spellfray equipment you can find in your Monarch Precon Blitz decks, by the way. So you have to go get your Monarch Precon Blitz decks to get your Spellfray Cloaks, unless you're shopping them on TCG Player. But Shock Charmer, Spellfray Cloak, and
Spellfray
Leggings
Float.
ended up... Yeah, Spellfray Float.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Words are difficult. You had Spell Void 4, which back in the day used to be enough for Kano for the big one, because you didn't have Aether Wildfire at the time. You were really looking out for Sonic Boom or Lessons in Lava at that point. And if you didn't want to pitch, so you Spell Void, you broke everything for the one time that you could do it, and for a time that ended up working.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So it's like, if you're gonna be in this position where you're gonna be you're gonna have to overextend yourself, because the Kano's game plan right now, for the most part in CC, is Aether Wildfire. Even in Blitz, to some extent, it's Aether Wildfire. That is the win con. That is the game plan. That is how they're pushing through insane amounts of damage, because before it was Stir Forked, and in Blitz, Stir is banned now, Snap Hacks is banned now, and for actually very good reasons. In hindsight, I'm glad LSS caught on to that one before it became a problem, because Kano would have been a very toxic deck otherwise. Stir into... I was trying to figure that combo out before, but it was so expensive and I couldn't figure it out, and I had to wait for somebody else to figure it out. Unfortunately, I'm a little bummed in hindsight. I wish I would have worked a little harder on it, because that probably would have been really gross in Blitz, to be able to do that, or to just be terrorizing the meta with Aether Wildfire when nobody was suspecting of it. But anyway, I digress. Where I was going with this was, if you're overextending yourself, you want Spell Void. You want to be able to shut down that Aether Wildfire. And the catch, though, and this is where then people go, well, I'm just going to bring in Spell Void instead. And if you're playing a slower game plan and you're going to have expendable resources, you 100% don't want to be on that Spell Void plan. Then you do want to be on the Arcane Barrier. And I think that's the one nuance that people need to be aware of. When to run the one versus the other is really, it comes down to your game plan and what you're doing with your hand. Bearing in mind that once again, as Kano, the more Arcane Barrier I see, sometimes the happier I am. Now, like, don't get me wrong, AB 4, 5, 6 are difficult to play into, but they're not unwinnable matchups. When I see that kind of Arcane Barrier, I know I can tempo you that much harder. I know that I can now strip 2 cards from your hand and just shut down what you're able to do on your turn that much more. So that is the one caveat and something to be aware of when playing into, or like when trying to figure out the balance of like what you want to be doing and how you want to respect Kano. But yeah, funnily enough, on the Sunday, I had multiple conversations with people where they were like, I just cut my null rune again because I just figured there wouldn't be any Kanos again. Like, people already are forgetting, and I'm gonna say, I'm saying it here that Kano's still around and Kano's still a threat. And
Kano absolutely is still around.
And no one's gonna listen. People are gonna continue to disrespect it. I'm gonna continue to play it for as long as I can because it's so much fun and no one's prepared for it. I took down in Blitz Armory last night on it. One of the guys, like, in round 3, the other XO, I flip over Kano and he's like, yeah, I forgot to bring my null rune today. And I was like, oh no. And he told me that too late. I was like, if he told me that like before he presented his deck, I would have been like, you can 100% proxy and null rune. But like, we're like halfway through the game and he's like, I forgot to bring my null rune. And I'm like, oh no, it's too late. I'm not gonna let you proxy it now.
Yeah. Like, I'm taking the W.
Oh, and it was still a close match. He still got me down to 2. And I had to do like some janky wildfire play and like I had to like play off the top a little bit. Like, I went in for the kill one turn and I ended up like Kanoing into, I think, an energy potion, and I was like, damn it, now I'm short resources. I was like 1 resource short to like try to kill him again that turn, so I had to like just barely, like, he was like threatening lethal with dominate, and I couldn't not block it, and all I had in hand was the Aether Wildfire, and I was like, well, if I block with this, I don't know if I'm going to find another Aether Wildfire, so I had to Ragamuffins had it back on top of my deck and grab another card to block with, and then draw the Aether Wildfire next turn and hope that I had enough resources in hand without, because my initial plan was to Arsenal the Wildfire and then draw up a full hand and then for sure be able to kill him, but when he presented that Nourishing Emptiness, that's when I had to get crafty, and Ragamuffins hat, like, it's just all the more reason why it's a powerhouse.
Ragamuffins hat, freaking Potion of Deja Vu. That's what Kano, I think we could spend an entire episode on how dangerous Kano is and how much I hate it.
We should do that combat chain takes on Wizard at some point.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good idea. I have played, so the
entertaining part of the episode will just be like your reaction to all the Wizard stuff.
Like, I hate what you're doing. But we do know, right? We know Kano has an inevitability there, right? And you can prepare for it. But the moment, if Kano has the pieces, the moment you make yourself vulnerable enough, they can fire off.
Yeah.
I have lost multiple games. So I've been on Dory a bunch lately. So I have faced down a bunch of Kanos in that time. And the only times that I felt like I was the only times that I've actually I've taken the L is when I have committed every card right in my hand. So I would consistently hold back a blue. I would go AB3 and keep courage on the board and consistently prevent damage over time and put myself in a very good spot and still be able to swing the Dawnblade a few times. And there's one game in particular that I was up 31-2 against Kano, and I pitched the blue card. And the moment that card hit the pitch zone, they went off, and they hit me for 38. It was something, but they did have to top deck a little bit, but it was like wildfire into something, into Aether Blaze, into Aether Blaze. Like, it was over
Blazing
at that
Ether.
point. Yeah, yep.
I love double blazing
But
Ether.
like, yeah,
It's so
double
good.
blazing Aether is what did me in that game. And it was like, at any moment, if they're still alive, there's just an ability to OTK somebody, which is nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could a whole episode on that, and how how you like to kill people with it, how I like to prevent Kano from killing me. I like to think my Kano matchup is okay, just from attrition at this point. But so Vegas happened, and then after Vegas, we just got over pre-release weekend.
Oh, you know what? I did want to. So just to finish recapping, so we did see Out of the Battle Hardened.
That's right. I'm sorry. We got on such a tangent. Battle Hardened won by friend of the pod.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say.
Ray.
Shout out to Chris Ray. Heck of a job taking down the Battle Hardened and on Starvo, I believe.
Yep. Bit the bullet, bit the crayons, just went for the W, got the PTI. Did what he had to do.
That's not his first PTI either, so good for him.
The man's on a mission.
He's a machine.
Chris Ray is a very good Flesh and Blood player, and he is always floating around the top of every tournament that he participates in. He's just a dangerous. He's one of those. If this was like a physical sport, he'd be the opponent you never want to see, because it's going to be like a beat 'em up, tough game. You're not going to leave unscathed. That is Chris Ray in Flesh and Blood. You sit down across from him, you're in trouble. He's got that low voice. He talks very quiet, very humble, very very unassuming. And then he just, here, I'm going to beat you. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's just so unassuming and just like wins it instead.
Yeah, he's got that. He's just a happy smile with his glasses, and there it is, and just whoops ass. But yeah, congratulations, Chris Ray, on the Battle Hardened win in Vegas. But yeah, so we
pre-release.
did have pre-release.
I feel like pre-release. I had 4 pre-releases. I have
so many pre-releases.
I'm very fortunate in my area, neck of the woods, to kind of have the scene we do. We don't have a huge scene, but we just have a very dedicated local scene, and everybody shows up every night of the week for the most part, and it's a good time.
That is fantastic. How was your? Give me a quick snapshot of your pre-release experience.
Okay, well, so at this point, pre-release is kind of at the point where I'm like really starting to wrap my head around the set now. So like if we follow chronologically, like my Adam's take on learning Uprising. By the time we reach pre-release, like Vegas, I was completely like, okay, how do I like? What are these cards? What do they do? Then throughout the week, from Vegas to pre-release, I actually found on Felt Table that they launched the beta for their. If you're a Patreon on Felt Table, there's a sealed simulator where like you generate. So it's essentially like Magic Arena's sealed generator. It generates 6 packs, and like you can build a deck out of it. The only difference is you're playing into the AI, and right now, because it's still in beta, you're not playing into Uprising AI. You're playing into this is the one part though I think the product's really well done, and I'll give Felt Table a lot of credit. They've come a long way from where they were initially. I think just exclusively doing it, even I get that you need time to build the Uprising AI, and I'm no software coder or anything like that, so I can't even imagine how daunting that task is. just limiting it to the tails bot, I think, was a bit of an undersight. Like when they have I believe they have every set. Yeah, they've got Welcome Right There, Kin Rising, Monarch, and Tails on there. Like, I think they should have made it a rotation of all the heroes, because sometimes playing Droma, you just get caught playing into Oldhim over and over again, and just like Oldhim pops everything, and it's not a realistic experience of what the Uprising limited experience might be. And I think if they just made it like broader, like, you know, maybe you get to play into Dash or you get to play into Viserai or something like that, could have been a better, more well-rounded learning experience. But despite that, it was still, I spent the week on Felt Table, and it was a great way to kind of learn the set a little bit more and just kind of learn what the cards do and what a good deck might look like for each hero. Sure, you're not getting the same depth of gameplay that you'd get out of playing into a real live human, but you still get to know whether your deck works and kind of does things. Because like if you build this atrocious deck, like it's you, even into an AI, you're gonna lose, especially with the model that Felt Table is kind of built. And yeah, at this point, so
I will say losing on Felt Table is a very good barometer of where you're as a baseline for your deck.
If you're losing on Felt Table, you need to you got to figure something out. You know, either your game plan's off or you're not doing something right, or you know, they're like I said, maybe you're playing Dromai into Oldhim, and I did find that is an unwinnable matchup for Dromai, or a near unwinnable matchup. There was one or two I was able to pull out, but they were very very difficult and very narrow wins. Yeah, Felt Table it's way better than just goldfishing. Anybody who's like, oh, I just like goldfish the deck and I was able to like Magical Christmas Land do this, it's not realistic. Felt Table at least gives you an opponent and makes it interactive, and I think, you know, makes it more realistic from the sense of like you're getting pressured by your opponent. Yeah. Shout out to those guys. They're doing a phenomenal job. I'm excited to see what the future of Felt Table looks like. I know there's also the Flesh and Blood online portal. I don't know if that one has an AI in it or if it's just an ability. It just allows people to play against each other. But between Felt Table and the Flesh and Blood online crew, you know, those are probably the closest we have to like people trying to take on a portal or client for Flesh and Blood. And I'm excited to see where the future, I know James White intends for Flesh and Blood to be played in the Flesh and Blood, and I appreciate playing in the Flesh and Blood, but to some extent, you know, like simulate or limited generators or simulators or things like that, they're important to like practicing and like figuring out things. And because of that, I'm excited to see where these tools will go, and how good they'll get over time.
Absolutely. I think TTS is like a staple in any solid playtest. Like you just got to do it.
Yeah, TTS Sorry, go ahead.
TTS. TTS is, I think it is one of those. It's one of those tools that is, I believe, speeding up that evolution through an online client. It's not an officially supported one by LSS, but people are, right, its use is increasing specifically through Flesh and Blood. I'm curious. I always think Flesh and Blood is like a little bigger than it probably really is. I'm curious to know if like TTS has gotten like a bump from Flesh and Blood players, or like a noticeable increase in usage or whatever through Flesh and Blood testing. I'm very curious about that. But I do know a lot of people play, like even Commander is probably likely more popular at that point. They do that. They do that as well.
You just said do twice.
I did. It's terrible. Please edit that as well. Just cut that sentence out. The TTS is
that's going
used
to be the
widely.
spoiler for the
Flesh and
episode.
blood. Yeah, do.
Or I'm just
But
going to leave it in. We'll
they.
see. We'll see how I'm feeling tomorrow
Oh
morning.
man, this is just how nature intended. So 4 pre-releases, 4 Icelanders.
No. What did we do? We did Fi. There was once was Fi, once was for sure Icelander, another time was for sure Fi. It was either it was 2 Icelander, 2 Fi, I think. I never really had the Dromai pool, or I had some. I had some good draconic pools, but the draconic pools I had always pulled me into ninja over illusionist. So that's why I just never ended up on Dromai. I think in sealed to end up on Dromai, you really have to have a good Dromai pool. You really want to see those rake the embers, the sweeping blows, the oh boy, I can't even. There's one more, Skittering Sands, I think it is. You need to have the Ash generation, and you need to have the Aether Ashwing generation above anything else. Like having some sick dragons on top of that is pretty sweet. But if you don't have those things, she just doesn't do anything.
It does feel. It does feel like very similar in a sense to how Tales had started out, where you had a very linear aggro deck that was easy to build and super popular because of that, and that seemed to be the most popular deck this over world premiere and then into pre-release weekend. Fi was became, I think, was the most popular one, and I think it's because it's easy to build, and a mid Fi pool is still probably better than a mid Icelander or Dromai pool in that sense. Icelander, if you open up enough blues, it seems like Icelander fits, and in that sense, it feels a little like Oldham was, where if you had the Oldham pool, you went nuts and you dominated with Oldham. And Icelander, I feel like, is very similar, where if you have the pool for it, Icelander just dominates games in limited. And then Dromai and Lexi are very much in parallel, where you need all the pieces to work together in order to make those decks work. And in the sealed environment, it was just very difficult to actually get those pieces together to create a coherent deck.
Yeah. Dromai is going to be a lot more playable in limited, in draft, where you're able
to a draft where you can
handpick those pieces and get all the tools you need to really make her fire off. But in sealed, you need to be blessed with a really good Dromai pool. So I ended up going twice on Fi, twice on Icelander. First time I played Fi, we played 3 rounds, had a 2-1 record. It was the EXO going into the last round, and Fi felt really good. It's just like Fi is what we expected Fi to be. Fi is an aggro deck that forces awkward blocks. You can't effectively just block Fi from hand. You do need something like Quell to kind of really go with those really wide turns that Fi has. Those low to the ground wide turns. Like Fi is taking wide to a whole new level. Like it's so easy to hit 4 or 5 chain link turns, and that's just like that's the average. So the playing 5 first in my first event, 2-1. The Icelanders, it was a little rougher. I think in my first event I went 2. I ended up just conceding to a guy because we were going to go to a draw anyway. Don't let a judge hear that. Because we were at time, and I was just like, whatever. It was a casual event. I didn't care. Figured because that one was a win a box, and at that point, we were both. I was officially out of contention for the box, so I figured I might as well still give him a shot at winning the box. So I ended up officially going 2-2 on Icelander. Then had a second event later that day where I went 1-1-1 on Icelander again. I forced Icelander in that second event on the Saturday. I think that was the reality of it. I really wanted to play Icelander at that point, and I forced it. My pool was probably a little more on the Phi side again. And then on the Sunday, I ended up going 4-0 on Phi, and that's where I had a really good Phi deck at that point, and I mean, the other reality is I won all the dice rolls, or no, the one time I didn't win the dice roll, he chose to go first, and I think that's one of my as we dive into it a little more, that's one thing I think is correct in as Phi is you want to go second.
Yes,
you want to
that.
drive that tempo. You want going second as Phi is so much more powerful than going first.
Yeah, right. Tempo is king. Going second guarantees damage first, forces cards out of hand. Phi is the tempo king, right? Gotta do it. Yeah. Gotta spill your cards. And you know what? Going first in Phi does not suck either. We'll talk more about it, but I mean, it goes wide. You're gonna get hits. I think you can go first a lot more effectively than some other aggressive heroes that do want to go. You want to go second. Second's preferable, but your first turn in this deck is not nothing. You can still make some stuff happen.
Yeah, and so why don't we at this point? Why don't we just kind of part of the plan for this episode was to just look at the three heroes and what they're kind of in essence doing, and how to kind of pilot them effectively to some extent. I think we're still figuring out what they're going to look like in CC. Like right now, everything everybody knows is based off of kind of what they're doing, and for the most part sealed. Like people haven't drafted them much. There was a couple pre-release events that had a top 8 draft. None of the ones I played in had a top 8 draft, unfortunately, or any top 8 for that matter. But so like Phi, like right off the bat, my 4-0 Phi list, I think I had 5 blues in it. You're running a lot of yellows, mostly reds. Like I might have been as high as like half the deck being reds, if not even more. With that being said, so and this is this is a card I really I want it. We're going to talk about more down the road in this episode, but one of the cards that I think really pulled me into Phi both times was Sash of Sandikai. Sash is the Draconic Tunic. And in Limited, where you're those games as Phi, you're not looking for the game to go more than 2 or 3 turns. Sash is what really enabled my game plan in both games. I don't know that I would have done been able to pull out the turns that I was able to pull out without Sash. Sash was there's another card that we're going to talk about in a little bit here, Red Hot. Sash was what enabled Red Hot every single time I got that card off, and especially because that deck is as redline as it is, and you're looking to just have one really powerful turn to like just cripple your opponent and put them in a position on the total back foot. Sash is what's going to enable that turn. And the thing is that turn is a lot more achievable than I think people realize too. Like it's not even like necessarily has to be a 5-card hand thing. Like I did a 17 damage turn with Fi off of 4 cards with Sash turn 1 with no filtering.
Yeah, Fi is amazingly consistent, right? In a limited sealed pool, red attacks with Go Again mean everything, and you really are right. You're able to put cards down. You're consistently, and this translates as you get into constructed. That translates as you get into constructed as well, where Fi's ability to consistently deal what ends up being like 10 to 15 damage on a fair turn, easy without any setup, going 5 to 6 chain links long with the Phoenix Flames as an addition to it. It is a go wide aggro party every time.
Yeah,
and you don't have to rely on hits. You are just stretching your opponent too thin every time.
And presenting those awkward. Part of what makes Fi shine is those awkward blocks and awkward damage. It's almost like reverse break points where it's like I'm gonna present, instead of these attacks for there is the occasional attack for 4, but a lot of it is like attacks for 1, attack for 2. And it's just forcing these awkward blocks where it's like I can only block for 3 or for 2 out of hand. And when the chain goes 5 or 6 long and you've only got 4 cards in hand to block with, it's hard to cover up all that damage.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes it especially in a sealed environment, right? I think all those factors make it probably like the easiest choice to make for the most part. Like if you have questions on like what your pool is doing, if you can reliably put together 20 reds, if you're looking at the top right, you're looking for a 0, and if you're looking in the text box, you're looking for Go Again. And I think really just smush those together with a couple blues.
I think, and to expand on that a bit, so some key things you're wanting to keep in mind when you're building the Fi deck is Draconic Chain and starters. Cards like Ronin Renegade, Red Ronin Renegade is a powerhouse of a chain starter. Once again, red brand with I always get this one mixed up. Is it brand with Emberclaw, brand with Cinderclaw? Either way,
Cinderclaw. Brand with Cinderclaw.
Brand with Cinderclaw is a 0 for 3 at red Go Again. Like, what an amazing chain. And then the fact that if you've got a scar for a scar in your hand to follow it up with, if there's that much of a life, sometimes you're gonna, like, in the interest of like trying to push your opponent over the edge, you're gonna take just like a huge chunk of damage to hold on to your hand, and you're gonna be able to go brand into scar for scar, and that is the fact that you can do that is incredible. All of a sudden scar for scar contributes to a Draconic Chain Link and really turns on a lot of the the rupture effects and kind of what Fi is looking to do. And Dust, I was gonna say there is another one I really liked. It was Dust Runner Outlaw.
Yes,
in limited.
In limited,
the blue
100%.
I was meh on. The red was really it was shiny. It was good.
It was it really showed up.
Yeah, it put in work. There we go. It put in work. It really put in work. I remember what the other point I was gonna make was 2 costs. In Fi, when you are building Fi, You do want to be, especially in limited, you do want to be averse of putting in 2 costs. The only one I would really consider at any, there is one with built-in go again once again. Rebellious Rush.
Oh, yeah.
This
I know
card
that
was
card.
okay. Spending 2 resources to start a chain is not ideal. When the deck is as resource hungry as it is, and Searing Emberblade is already as expensive as it is. Don't get me wrong, Searing Emberblade is a powerhouse, and I loved it in the limited deck, because it's an automatic. It's a draconic chain link on a stick, and that part is amazing. But Rebellious Rush is definitely going to be more of just like a, even though it does have that unconditional go once again, it is very much a filler card and something to be very 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 aware of, that it's like not an auto include by any means in limited.
Yeah, you're going to be running super lean. I think at max you want 8 blues, but you're perfectly okay if you have less than that. Even if your reds are good enough, and you're not not putting in filler yellows and such, to get to 30, you can get away with a lot there because you're not spending a lot of resources other than your Searing Emberblade at that point.
Yeah, and
Searing Emberblade, right? The chain usually goes pitch a blue, Searing Emberblade with go again, and usually using the one remaining resource to activate a chain link early, and so you spend 1, right? But you don't have to do that. You can still attack with the Emberblade and very easily get to the 3rd chain link, just to activate 5 for free. But you can, if you're using resources, you want to be efficient with your resource allocation instead of having one floating out there. You can very much pay the 1 when the time comes.
Yeah, I think that for the most part covers. Did you have anything else to add for like Fi as a base? Like, I do feel very much that Fi is going to be the pile hero for Uprising limited. Fi is the safe bet. I think even in constructed, Fi is going to be the breakout hero when everybody does get their Uprising cards and we start to see some events with Uprising. I think Fi is going to be the first hero that really starts to do some things and is going to be the hero to beat begin with.
It is going to be the week 1 most popular hero in constructed, and I can go on forever. I've been testing Fi in constructed for a while now, and I love its consistency. It is very much a different beast than Katsu. It is not the same kind of ninja as Katsu was. The puzzle pieces fit completely differently. And for instance, there are very few attack reactions that are actually worth the space in limited or in constructed. The liquefies and the combustion points are nice to have in limited, but they really don't have. If you're not attacking, if you don't have a handful of attacks in Fi, those are like cards lost. It's wasted cards almost, with very few exceptions. But unlike Katsu, where you would like razor reflexes and things like that, it is so threat dense with these attacks that it does its thing. It does it well. It does it often, and I think a lot of people will be leaning towards it. And it'll be interesting to see how people do with it. I do believe that there is a very medium way of building it, which doesn't do much of any one thing and thus doesn't have a great payoff. And you end up doing this, you do 10 to 15 damage a turn and that's it, right? And you might set up for something a little bigger that might get you to 20 plus. But if you are doing it that way, you're probably not going to see great results, and I do think that there are some people out there that are. So there's definitely some tech pieces out there. Some were in Uprising. I would look into older sets. I would just say that. There are cards already there that will help Fi go super over the top, and that's where you should be looking to get those wins in week 1.
Yeah, 100%. Do you want to? I think we can get through Dromai pretty quickly here because.
That's how do I feel about Dromai?
Well, I mean, we've spoken about Dromai a bit already, and the reality is a lot of what Fi is looking to do, Dromai is looking to do as well, just in a flashier way. Make the dragons and go wide with a bunch of dragons. That's you're still looking to establish a bunch of draconic chain links. You're still looking to go wide on your opponent with awkward blocks and what have you. It's just a different means of getting there. And like the deck building constraints are still fairly similar. Like you're still looking to do a lot of reds. It's just Dromai, like we said before, is hard and sealed. Like you really need that god pool to really pull Dromai off well. And Dromai is going to shine more in Blitz, or no, not Blitz, Draft. And beyond that, I think Dromai is a bit of an enigma, like for Constructed. I don't think people really know what to expect yet. And I think that was the same thing with Prism when we first got Prism, right?
Yeah, very much. So it is 100% an illusionist class. So when you see it in practice, you can see where the inspiration came from Prism, and that comes in the form of the Aether Ashwings. There are a few great cards in Dromai that if you find in limited, they can really break open a game. You do need dragons, right? Number one, you need dragons. You can't just have Ash. You need the big honkin' dragons. One in particular is I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's Uvia, the 1 attack 6 toughness that transforms an Ash into an Aether Wing I believe when it comes into play and at the start of your turn.
Yeah, that's correct. And Uvia is definitely, like, if you open an Uvia, you have a lot of way to make Ash, you have that in itself is going to be a decent Dromai deck. It's going to be one that's looking to build, just pump out a lot of Aether Ashwings and overwhelm the board that way. Yeah, like Uvia is one of the dragons that if I'm looking to see to kind of start to pull me into Dromai. Beyond that, are there any other like rare dragons that are maybe Necria? That one's maybe pulling me into Dromai, because once again, that's a steady source of Ash. Like, I mean, if you have an Uvia and a Necria, you're laughing, I think.
I do think that the strength in Dromai is definitely going to be in its dragons. And I also think Dromai is showcasing the balance of the limited format in this set here, because it is great. In my opinion, I have not seen a lot, but I think it handles Icelander's arcane abilities very well because of the Ash Wings, and you're usually running some Quells, and your blue count's going to be much higher than in Fi. But on the other hand, Fi can have a bit of a field day if this is an Ashwing centric pool that you have. Phoenix Flames, the allies in general, cannot be defended, and on hits are guaranteed. So Phi can absolutely target Ashwings 1, 2, 3 with Phoenix Flames and continue their combat chains. So if you want to strategically open up a rupture card of some sort, like if you have Lava Burst and you attack once, right? If you attack with Rising Resentment for 3, possibly targeting a dragon. Right, that is a hit. It does not have spectral. It doesn't have spectra, so your combat chain doesn't close. It hits if you have a 3 toughness dragon. That's gone. Now you can attack with Searing Emberblade for 3 potentially. So there's a few 4 health dragons out there, and there's a couple 2 health dragons, and then you have your Ashwings for 1. You can absolutely start. So you can see where this goes. You can absolutely start taking out their board in one fell swoop if you have the pieces together. And those Phoenix Flames match up against those Aether Wings, super great. And again, that is that translates into Constructed as well. But what I've found in Limited is that Phi has a real problem having their turns do something and having to deal with some of the fatter dragons. That Uvia is a 6 toughness. That is really, really hard to take off the board. There's the dragon with the endurance counter that prevents 3 damage. That is difficult to take off the board.
Yendurai is that dragon.
Spoken quite eloquently.
I'm trying to learn the dragon names.
If Dromai has the ability to generate that ash, put some of those ash wings out, but also has a good density of those dragons, you can really cause some problems with both other heroes.
Well, and I think, though, I do want to, from the little bit of experience I do have on Dromai at this point from Felt Table even, I can say that I don't even think you need that many of the actual like dragons. If you've got one, like, I mean, if you've got an Uvia or a Necria or something like that, any combination of those, or like a Chromai or something like that, you're in a good spot for dragons. But beyond that, it's going to be the sweeping blows, the rake the embers, and the skittering sands. Those are kind of going to be also great enablers for Dromai in especially in Limited, because they, the sweeping blow makes your ash, the skittering sands transforms them and gives them a buff. Rake the ember both makes and transforms ash. Those are huge enable, like on its own, like those allow Dromai to do so much.
100%. There is 100% like a great limited pool to be had with Dromai. And personally, I have lost to every Dromai I have faced in limited action. I have found the opponents who get the Uvia and 7 to 8 Aether Ashwings. Couldn't quite figure it out. I also ran Icelander, both pre-releases I was at, so I had no idea what I was doing. But those were both things. But like Dromai was able to establish its board state, and while it was doing it, I was like, this is very Prism-like. I can see what they're doing here with Illusionist here, just overwhelming with token attackable, a token attacking entities that just overwhelmed you over time. You just couldn't do anything about it. And then once it got late game and you couldn't, you started to make decisions where you were going to face, and now you regret going face. So you try to clear out some of these things, and now you can't, and then the game's over at that point.
Yeah, by that point, dealing with the allies is going to be just like dealing with the Spectra auras, where there's going to be a careful balance of, like, in the early game you have to be very on top of them up until a point where you've reached the point of no return. You've gotten their life, their life total down to a certain point where you're able to actually pressure them and try to go for the kill. And that's going to be the one of the balances, like playing into to Dromai, is going to be like figuring out when do I go face and when do I deal with allies, with dragons.
Yep.
And I think in like the first few weeks, that's going to be a big thing that people are just going to be trying to figure that out.
Fun fact: Waning Moon does not target allies. Had
No,
to
I
read
learned
that.
that the hard way.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Did not. It's like, well, at least I can deal 2 to something. Nope, cannot.
Nope, just
Cannot.
target hero.
But that
Um,
is a solid transition to get into Icelander.
that is a great
Uh,
segue into Icelander. So you played Icelander twice. Like, what stood out to you right away?
that it I'll tell you what, the one thing that really stood out is that there is a very specific play pattern with Icelander that you need to do to get right in order to be successful. So I think no matter what your card pool is, the cards themselves are less material than what they represent, right? You need your fuse cards, you need blues, and you need to know that play pattern. Um, so my first pre-release, I had I live with regret to this day. I should have just played with my 5 cards, but consensus was that my Icelander pool was really great. I had 15 blues, and I'm not sure if that was enough, but uh, it was like 15 blues, 8 yellows, and like a handful of reds to complete everything out. And um, it was I felt like I had a good ratio of fuse to ice, and so I went for it. And what I came to find that was most difficult for me was the ability to do my turns were much more difficult than my opponent's turns. Right, very straightforward process in my opponent's turns as long as I arsenal the blue card. So my turns, I had to really evaluate my hand, and I wanted to have some sort of non-attack action, and that can be your powerful red spells, potentially with fuse. I wanted enough that I could pitch to still attack with Waning Moon and arsenal a blue card, so that on my opponent's turn, I could do the thing, right? I can play a blue card from Arsenal, create a Frostbite, instant speed, Waning Moon, possibly do something else. I found it very difficult to clear out dragons against Dromai, but I did not have a ton of any target stuff. It was a lot of, and what it was a bunch of ones, one shot stuff, frosting, blue. There was one spell that was like deal 1 to a hero and then 1 to an ally of some sort. I know that scaled up.
Singe.
Yeah. So the thing about Icelander for me was I really got an idea that something was there, and I'm sure that'll bear fruit in Constructed. But I really missed not having just the cards that I felt like I wanted. Like I wanted blue cards, and when I didn't get blue cards, I was upset, and it just wasn't. It made my turns awkward, and if I sold out on a turn, right? If I had to either defend with all my cards or on my turn, I felt like I could deal a lot of arcane damage. It was almost never worth it if that meant not arsenaling a blue card. So I felt like my turns were tempered down by that reality. Because if you don't arsenal a blue, you're not doing much anything. And in limited, you don't have you may play this as an instant outside of Icelander's ability. Every once in a while, I believe that Wizard Majestic, it's like a Tome of Aetherwind for 3 instead of not that's giving it too much credit, but Tome of Duplicity, I believe it is. You pay 3, you can banish. You look at like a card. If it's a non-attack, you can banish it and play it this turn as an instant. Outside of that, I don't think that there's much that you can do that would incentivize arsenaling something other than a blue, is what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, and I found that as well as and I think it's kind of, I don't want to say it's obvious because there were very, very rare times where it's like, yes, I want to arsenal a red just to have something, be able to draw a 5-card hand, but that's in a realm where it's like you're looking to maybe block with 3 cards or like 2 cards and then play that red on your turn, then follow that up by the moon, and then try to arsenal a card and then try to drive some tempo from there on their turn once again. But like Icelander, and then beyond that, Icelander is only going to arsenal a red in CC when you're going to go in for the kill and you're going to play that red off of Stormstriders. Beyond that, you're never going to arsenal a red in Icelander, is what I found at this point. But I did also find that Icelander was actually, in a way, though, easier to pull off than I expected in that limited setting. Yes, you need to have like a very key pool. You're looking for a lot of ice cards and a lot of blue, but like there's a lot of ice cards and there's a lot of blues and a lot of wizard cards and a lot of non-attack actions. So it's doable, though your game plan is going to change slightly, and your deck is going to, like, what your deck does is going to change drastically based on like what your pool is. And I do think there's going to be times where you're going to be better off playing other heroes, even if you do have what looks like potentially a decent Icelander pool. A really powerhouse card that, 2 cards that I think were really powerhouses for me, Ice Eternal. It's one of the few non-ice cards I'm happy to put in the arsenal and know it's really going to put in some work. And then the Red Aether Ice Vein was a really one of the few like 3-cost cards I want to put in the deck. You're being, that 5 arcane and the on-hit effect. That's pretty much like it's gonna hit in the red.
It is. Yep.
It's so powerful.
I don't think there's literally any way, unless they had. No, I don't think they can. I think if they went full quelling suite, I don't think there's anything else that would give it that you could prevent the 5th damage, unless you were Dromai with enough Ashwings out. That's about it.
Helios Miter, if you've got a handful of blues, maybe.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But yeah,
I was thinking about that. I was still at that's 4 for 4 preventing 2, and you still have. I mean, how many cards do you have left at that point to go into quell? It's just very difficult. The Aether Ice Vein is a very good red to have in that deck, as you were saying. To your point.
Yeah. And then like any blue ice card you're happy to play, I think, and that's kind of one of the key things there is like any blue ice card is very very
goes
playable.
right in. Yeah, it's like a red attack would go again with 5, just goes in.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, some of them are going to be more potent than others, like your blue frosting, 0 for 1. Woo. But the fact that it gives a frostbite is still really good. And then the other big key, I think, with Icelander is just kind of, there's going to be a really key balance with knowing when to play on your opponent's turn and when to not. It's not always going to be correct, though it's, for the most part, Icelander is looking to tempo, I think, on the opponent's turn, and is actually looking to play on the opponent's turn more than Kano is, as a general rule of thumb. Even at that, though, there are going to be moments where you're actually wanting to like do things on your turn versus their turn, and it's going to be a fine balance that people are going to have to figure out. Yeah,
I would recommend, as if you're not used to Icelander, if you are looking to get if you're prepping for RTN drafts and things of that nature, if you went to a pre-release, take your sealed pools. Put these heroes together, and especially Icelander. you can get a lot out of goldfishing Icelander.
Get those
What
felt table
I'm
reps,
thinking.
guys. Can't
Yeah,
stress it
just
enough.
it. I think that more than anything else, I think if you are in a position where you might have to play Icelander and you're not used to it, getting those reps in, like I said, it is such a specific sequence of cards that you need to play, and if you can get the sequencing down, the rest of it can fall into place, and you can make every game competitive. Whether or not, if they got the nuts, then so be it. But to be able to grind things down effectively, you're going to be dealing a ton of arcane damage, but realistically, you're going to be dealing maybe 6 to 8 arcane in a turn, in a given turn, right? Like if you have the best case scenario, you're doing something like you're dealing 3 arcane and then pitching a card for another 2 from Waning Moon on your turn, and then arsenaling, and then on their turn, right, doing something fancy with the non-attack action, and as an instant attacking with, or using Waning Moon to get 3 arcane out of that. That's gonna, that incremental damage over time is important, and it allows you to kind of grind things out. It still allows you to block a little bit here and there. That arcane is pretty unblockable, forces them to either take cards out of their hands or just let that damage go through, and late it matters. It forced them to burn their quell equipment. And then once they're defenseless, you can really just, right. Once their equipment's gone, you can just Waning Moon them for 2, right, and just be done with it. So getting them into that position is super important.
Yeah, 100%. Anything else on Icelander?
Yeah. I think Icelander has arguably some of the, look at the equipment, people, when you're looking at these one of, we were talking about with Tommy last time how in limited, equipment is super important. Uprising equipment is going to be plentiful, right? You're no matter what, you're going to have access to Helios Miter. I very rarely saw somebody with less than 3 pieces of equipment, and most of the time they had a full set of equipment on there. Quell is great. Your hero item is, or your hero specific equipment is, for the most part, really good for your hero. And I think Icelanders in particular, the Glacial Horns and the Glove of Frostburn, or the Conduit of Frostburn, are very good if you have the right cards in your deck to treat them well. I was still learning what those cards did in my first pre-release deck, and realized afterwards that I missed a lot of opportunity to freeze something in Arsenal and then destroy it, which really would have slowed my opponents down by doing so. And I just needed to, so I think taking advantage of Icelander's equipment, being able to freeze a card from Arsenal and also destroy it, focusing on Conduit allows you to destroy a frozen card from Arsenal if you deal arcane damage that turn, and Glacial Horns lets you freeze a card. So those two come in handy pretty often. But I think those 2 might be one of the more powerful 2-card equipment combinations you'll find in the set. Conduit being wizard, specifically an ice wizard equipment, and Glacial Horns being an ice only. So I mean, you could Oldham can put it on, but you're not drafting Oldham. So.
maybe an ice Lexi thing in Constructed. Who knows?
Yeah, right.
I don't see it happening, but
there's definitely room for exploration on ice now, especially with the hexes and freezing things. I think it'll be interesting to see where all that goes with the other heroes. But I think that sums up our hero debrief coming out of pre-release, getting ready for week 1 here.
Yeah.
So with that being said, there are a lot of set reviews coming out. We're not huge advocates of regurgitating the same thing that everyone else is saying, and kind of get lost in the shuffle here. So we are going to kind of condense down our Uprising review here, and we're going to do 5 cards from Uprising that we're each interested in. We'll talk about them.
Yeah. Do you want to get right into the number 1 then for you?
Sure, let's do it. My first card that I like to talk about from Uprising is going to be Spreading Flame. Spreading Flame is a majestic draconic ninja action attack. It costs 1, attacks for 3, and blocks for 2. It says draconic attacks you control have +1 attack while their base attack is less than the number of draconic chain links you control. Go again.
Oh, this is a great way to push damage.
It's great, right? I think a constructed Phi deck is going to have a lot of these abilities and have access to a lot of these types of abilities. And the how you combine multiple instances of similar types of abilities is what will take you over the top here. So there was a big to-do in the scheduled banned and a banned and suspended list back in April that Stubby Hammers was going to be banned on June 24 in Blitz because of very flavorful and synergistic cards that are coming out in Uprising. And we see here what the hell they were talking about, right, when it comes to the card pool here. The Draconic and Draconic Ninja card pool are filled with cards that are base 3 attack that would benefit from Stubby Hammers. That being said, it's still a great card in CC and is probably the correct choice for the main arm equipment in Phi in Classic Constructed. But Spreading Flame has a lot of things going for it. So it does cost 1. That's usually not a factor. You're usually running Tunic. So if your Tunic's up to 3, this might be one of the things that you're going to use your Tunic resource to pay for. It has unconditional go again, which means that cards, the other cards that come into the pool that may require you to play a red beforehand or be the second or more draconic link in the combat chain, this one doesn't have to worry about it and can start it off. And obviously, because of the nature of its attack, you kind of want it early on so that the draconic links can really accumulate here. This really starts to shine quickly with the Phoenix Flames in particular. If you have 3 Phoenix Flames coming out, as long as you are at Chainlink 2 with the Phoenix Flames, they start getting the buff immediately. So your other attacks that are going to be base 3 attack will still get a buff, but later on in the chain. So your correct sequencing here on how you attack and in what order will you'll have to think about so that you can maximize the damage output coming out here. So that might also involve using Searing Emberblade to follow up. So if I were playing this, I would love to go Spreading Flames into Searing Emberblade, which actually, if it was at a late enough combat, chain link would actually trigger off of this. But once you do Searing Emberblade, then you can start getting into your 3 base attacks and less in your Phoenix Flames and start getting the buffs. There's no limit to them, so as long as your chain links are growing, your cards can get the buff. And once you've hit chain link 4 or 5, there's nothing you really have to worry about. So like I said, if you combine this with either Stubby Hammers or Art of War, your combat chain is ridiculous at that point. And this is one of these things. This is a game winner. You're setting up Phi for a turn where you can break Stubby Hammers, come in with the Spreading Flames, and at least make your attacks get +2 each hit, which is just Right. It's the crazy stuff, and we know how wide Phi can go, and this is where you get your 30 plus damage turn out of cards like this. 3 of auto include in classic constructed. In Blitz, it's an auto include in 2. I think this is a staple for Phi, and I think you'd be silly not to play it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, this card is going to be, I think, a powerhouse for sure.
But that's what I got on Spreading Flames. We'll go down my list here. The next one is going to be Crown of Providence. Crown of Providence, a very hyped generic legendary equipment. Originally spoiled by Arsenal Pass, Crown of Providence is a 2 defense equipment. It says when you defend with Crown of Providence, you may put a card from your hand or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. If you do, draw a card. Blade Break. So it is 2 block. It is a 1-time 2 block. And when you defend, you can pick a card from your hand or your arsenal and put it on the bottom of your deck, and then you draw a card. This is a great piece of equipment. There are so many heroes that want card fixing, right? And everyone's who's defaulted to Arcanite Skullcap and has wanted, just wished they could have something else other than the Skullcap, I think are going to be super happy with this card. It is one of those things where if you look at that at first glance, it might appear a little underwhelming, but you know that the card fixing is good. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You know that the card fixing is good. But if you look at the reality of what Skullcap is, you're very rarely in some heroes, very rarely getting the 3 block, and hardly ever using the arcane barrier aspect of that Skullcap. So to have a piece of equipment like Crown of Providence where you're guaranteed to get the 2 block and you're guaranteed to have a beneficial effect happen at a very important part of the game is just, it is chef's kiss. It is fantastic.
Yeah, I think Crown of Providence kind of like takes the best parts of like Hope Merchant's Hood, Crown of Seeds, Skullcap, and just kind of blends them all together into this amazing pivot turn enabler.
Yeah, and I've been part of some testing in just a variety of heroes, and as it turns out, almost every single one of them can use some sort of selective card fixing at a crucial moment in their games. This can be this is Rhinar, this is Briar. It was like the first one that came to mind, obviously a little biased, but the ability to fix a card from hand, it can be a game winner in Briar.
Viserai would have loved this. Like
Viserai absolutely.
Oh my god, that would have been so good.
Yep. My Bravo colleagues are very excited about this card. They are running this to take out a red, and put in and draw into another blue when they get that kind of just clunky, one resource clunkier than they wanted to.
Right.
It just has so many uses, right? If you are a hero that depends on a certain type of card, whether that be a certain pitch or a certain action, non-attack action, reaction, you can always benefit from the ability to see more cards. And so I think this does take over for a lot of heroes. I think Dorinthia kind of sticks with Skullcap. She's pretty consistent. But other than that, maybe Dash as well, probably Skullcap. But other than that, I think almost every single other hero could probably benefit. That, if you were defaulting to Skullcap, you're probably on Crown of Providence at this point. Probably top equipment in the set for me. I think it'll see a lot of use and it'll be a good staple.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. I think people are going to be a little slow to come to it, maybe. It's not going to come up as fast as we'd expect. I think the blade break is going to
Mm-hmm.
be something that people are going to be like a little hesitant on because they're going to just cherish that one extra life that
Yeah.
Skullcap buys them. But
Mm-hmm.
I think over time, you're right. Crown of Providence is going to become very much a staple card and a headpiece for a lot of classes, and possibly even overtakes Skullcap.
I will say that if you are right, if you're looking at Crown of Providence, you're going, but what if? Really evaluate what you're doing with your equipment and when you're doing it. When you are doing it. Um, I am willing to bet that you, for the most part, are using your equipment late once for a truly effective block. There might be some exceptions where you have the battle worn legendaries where you might stop a Katachi or something along those lines. But really, what is the block that matters, and when are you going to use that card for that, right? Um, I think that you're going to pivot off of your equipment block late, and when that happens, that's when Crown of Providence helps your pivot. So if you find yourself in that kind of situation where you are the type that will save your armor for late for one big, typically a 6 block or more depending on what your suite is at that point. But that when you throw everything at that object, Herald of Erudition, whatever it ends up being, that's going to change your game regardless of of how much of equipment you block with. You're going to throw everything in there, and you might not use your equipment again that game in as effective a way. And Crown of Providence is 100% a very suitable addition to just about any hero's equipment suite.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on, we do have another generic. We have the Majestic Defensive reaction. That all you got. Spoiled by a friend of the pod, Matt Flake. It is a 0-cost defense reaction that blocks for 3. It says while this is defending an attack with 2 or less attack, when the combat chain closes, draw a card. This is when I first saw this, I was like, 3, right? Because what are we doing here? But when you take a step back, right, this is crazy. If you even just look at what Phi does, right? On a fair turn, this is a defense reaction that replaces itself in your hand. This allows so many decks to that don't necessarily like to defend on its own. This now gives the flexibility for those decks to defend and not have to worry about reducing their turn. This also just takes out all these aggro heroes and such that are trying to go wide and try to cut you out of things. This is great, being able to draw the card off of that. It works on a ton of different things, and I think it's just it's not a 4-cost 0. It's not a 0-cost 4 defense reaction, so it does have a little more niche uses on it. But I think this is super effective, and I think it's gonna see a lot of use.
Yeah, and I actually got this once in one of my pools, and though I will caution, this is in some ways a sideboard card. Obviously you're not using this in all situations, but when it is relevant, yeah, the replacement of the card you just played is huge. This makes, once again, enabling pivot turns really, really good.
Yeah, just the ability to, we're talking weapon attacks, right? We're talking Rosetta Thorn,
Yep.
on the physical end of things. Kodachis. There's just so many applications for this, and like I said, the ability to replace itself, it stops the fear of having to block, right? So if you put this in, you can safely block and still have your full hand when your turn is ready. And so now you've done the thing your opponent didn't want you to do, and you've preserved some life, and you can proceed as you would otherwise. I think you're right. It is sideboard tech, but I think this is going to be pretty ubiquitous in a lot of sideboards, especially with if Phi is popular, right? This is in here, 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, pretty straightforward there. I am going to move on to my next one, and that is going to be. I didn't do this on purpose. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to Briar and all the generics I ran in Briar that these are the cards that I highlighted outside of the Searing Flame here. But my next card is going to be Sift. Sift is a rare cycle of cards. Comes in red pitch, yellow pitch, and a blue pitch. It is a generic action that defends for 3, and it says put up to 4 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck, then draw that many cards, go again. I think that this is a great card. The red, not so much. Red is super niche, right? The red you almost have to play from Arsenal in order to maximize its benefit, right? So you're gonna filter up to 4 cards, right? The only way that you do that is if you've arsenaled this and you've dumped, so you arsenal Sift, you play Sift, and you dump your entire hand back and draw it up. Not a ton of applications for this. Maybe Valda for the red. You can get 4 seismic surges off of that. So maybe that's where the red finds a home. The yellow and the blue in particular, I think, is probably the best out of the 3. These are finding homes in Rune Blades, specifically for me, Briar. The blue is almost an auto include at this point. I still need to do a little more testing on it, but most Briar builds are going up to 18 blues, and 3 of those blues are typically kind of I call them utility blues. It's not necessarily an earth card, but they're cards that just do something beneficial. So like look at Whispers of the Oracle and things of that nature. The ability to filter out a certain number of cards is always going to be beneficial for Briar. My eyes lit up initially when I saw the yellow one, because you can play the yellow one from hand and cycle the rest of your hand out. And my thought was, when like all the Briar players out there, how many times have you put Channel Mount Heroic out, done a thing, right? Kept it, pitched your earth card, put your flow counter on, and then drawn into just garbage afterwards, right? Just whatever that mess ends up being. Sift, I think, can win you a game in that instance. So the blue being a 3, so this being a 3 defense, and the blue being kind of a natural fit, I think is gonna. I think that's going to see a lot of play. The ability to just even cycle 2 cards is going to be great. I think people are still going to have to weigh whether or not the heuristics work in their favor, right? I think going through, as I've tested more and more, Sift is great, but conditionally so, right? So it might not necessarily be a 3 of in some decks, but this is one of those things where you're going to have to feel it out for yourself through testing. But when Sift is great, it is just the freaking best. Being able to take, like I said, that brick hand and draw into 3 attacks to extend your Channel Mount Heroic's life another 21 points of damage, it is irreplaceably fantastic. What are you going to take out for that? That is a huge question with Briar. Like, are you going to take out a Nimbleism and lose that, or do you take out a Revel? Do you take out, what do you take out? What is Sift better than? Um, I I don't think anyone that I've talked to has a straight answer there, and it very well may be at this time that status quo on Briar is probably still the best, and thus maybe Sift ends up on the cutting room floor, but it's definitely worth exploring, and its ability is unique and beneficial, and it'll definitely see some play. And I know some of the some players are definitely looking at this card, and not just in Briar. The yellow in Prism and other heroes as well. What do you think about Sift?
I'll be honest, initially I was a little surprised to see it on your list. I don't think it's bad per se, but I think it's definitely build dependent. When you mention it in Briar, that makes sense. It's kind of like once again, it's a Hope Merchant's hood on a card.
Yes, 100%, right? So that's a great example, right? Hope Merchant's Hood. I think if every Briar player could, they would run Hope Merchant's Hood if defending wasn't an issue, right? So I do have one more card to talk about, and it is a token card in Uprising. It is none other than the Phoenix Flame. Phoenix Flame, I wanted to talk about this because I think this card is going to be it's bonkers. It's a bonkers card. If you're Fi, it starts in your graveyard. You can have 3 in your constructed deck. You can have 3 in your limited deck. We talked about how good that is. Phoenix Flame makes Fi work, right? It extends combat chains. The ability to use something like Flame Call Awakening to fetch a Phoenix Flame, to be able to use Rise from the Ashes to pick up an extra Phoenix Flame from your graveyard outside of Fi's ability. Phoenix Flame is what enables you to get to Chain Links 5, 6, 7, and 8. This is what will enable you to threaten Mask twice in a turn, which is before now, right? It was unheard of.
When you say mask twice in a turn, you mean just like being able to, like, they block out and you can get another 3 links on them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You're gonna have 2 instances of threatening mask. So Phoenix Flame and Fi live and die with each other, right? If Fi is good, it's because Phoenix Flame enabled it. If Fi gets too good, it's going to be because of Phoenix Flame. So it's definitely something to look at. I don't think we're there yet, but I'm just saying if it's Phoenix Flame is the catalyst that makes Fi good. So it'll be very interesting to see Fi go burr this season in Constructed.
Yeah, no kidding. I think it's going to be an aggro deck unlike we've ever seen before.
That's what I got. Those are my 5 cards in Uprising that I'm excited to see.
Yeah, and I guess we'll rattle through my 5 cards quickly here. The first one on my list, Red Hot. This is a 2. It is a Dromai or Fi specialization at rare. Only comes in red. And it's super interesting that we saw like the dual specializations of Red Hot and Rise Up, though I don't think Rise Up performs the same way Red Hot does. Red Hot as a Rupture card is probably my favorite Rupture card in the set. It's just so you can, the way the decks are going to be built, you can really kind of build the deck for it to hit well, and it's just going to be such a good, it was such a good win condition for me on multiple times this past weekend in pre-releases. So anyway, it's a 2-costed red, 4 power blocks for 3, and the Rupture reads, if Red Hot is played as Chainlink 4 or higher, it has, when you attack with this, reveal the top X cards of your deck, where X is the number of Draconic Chainlinks you control, and deal damage equal to the number of red cards revealed this way to any target, then shuffle your deck. And to put it into perspective, I had this one nutty turn. Like I said, Offie, I was kind of hinting at this earlier. It was a 4-card hand, turn 1, no filtering, 17 damage. And the reason it was a 17 damage attack was because Red Hot, I hit 5 reds off the top. Now I know that's the high end, that's the ceiling, but it ended up being a Red Hot for 9. Now I know this is, we cautioned about playing 2-cost cards in Fi, and I don't know how this card plays in Dromai yet, I'll be honest. Dromai actually might have an easier time enabling it, because Dromai can like build up the board state and gain value going wide that way, whereas Fi is going to need to play all cards from hand to enable this. Hand in arsenal. It could play really well in Dromai too, but yeah, like this is probably one of the few 2-cost cards you do maybe want to include in your Fi limited deck. And now the next card I'm going to talk about, Sash of Sandikai, was a huge factor in enabling this card, and I do want to caveat that. And I think that probably is a great time to segue into my second card, which is Sash of Sandikai. This is the Draconic Tunic, essentially. Sash is a draconic chess piece, blocks for 0, and at instant it reads, destroy Sash of Sandikai to gain a resource, and activate this ability only if you've played a red card this turn. In both Dromai and in Fi, when you're playing resource starved decks that are mainly red line, that extra resource off Sash is what's going to enable those huge turns. It's what's going to enable you to pull off things like red hots for 9, big win cons with unblockable damage that your opponent can't deal with. So Sash is just kind of a no-brainer. I think possibly even a contender for best card in the set. I don't know what you think about either. Actually, I kind of just fired through 2 cards at once. Pat, I don't know if you had anything to add to either of those.
I do like Red Hot. It is not my favorite Rupture card. I am super Fi centric, but I do see its uses in Dromai. Sash is the same way. I don't know how I feel about Sash. Right, 1 resource at instant speed will always be good. I don't know. Maybe it is correct over something like Tunic. I suppose it depends on just how many turns and what you need, right? If you have the right tool for the job, it just, it works itself out. So if you are on like a 3-turn clock, anyways, and you would rather it, be at instant speed, and maybe it doesn't blow up in certain ways, but you might be able to react a little differently to it. I think Sash definitely has a spot. I see both of these as super, they're limited powerhouses. I'm curious to see if they see much outside of limited, if that makes sense. One of the things about Rupture is that those Ash Wings are draconic attacks, so
yes, that's exactly why I was saying Red Hot could be.
Yeah, it's definitely in the right place. It definitely has its applications. But that's how I feel about those two.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. I think in Blitz, Sash is going to see play, because you even bear in mind, like, into like the Icelander match where she's going to respond and give you a Frostbite. You can then respond with Sash to the Frostbite and have that resource to clear a Frostbite. So like Sash is.
That's very, very good point. And I do think that Blitz is going to become a Rupture format.
It could. It definitely has the potential. the third card on my list, this one's kind of this might be only for Uprising Limited. At this point, it's going to be interesting to see if this card sees any play. I don't expect this card to see any play in Constructed. But Helios Miter is a very
like you're a crazy limited player or something that you just love. You love limited cards.
Oh, it's so much fun. Just being able to just playing off of what you're, no magical Christmas land of, oh, if I have this card and this card, not like being confined to like whatever cards you.
It is so frustrating.
It's a beautiful
playing
thing.
Icelander last weekend and just going, if only I had the freaking cards I wanted, this would just go a lot smoother. But I can't have what I want because this is limited.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
I mean, and to each their own, right? Like one man's, I don't know. There's probably some saying. I was gonna say one man's trash is another man's treasure. That's not super applicable here, but
no, it is. My limited trash is.
So this card's probably only going to be an Uprising Limited card, maybe commoner. Helios Miter. Which is a zero-cost generic equipment head. Instant pay 2 resources, prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to your hero this turn by a source of your choice, and then destroy Helios Miter at the beginning of the end phase. The reason I highlighted this card, at first to me was a worse Quell, and I was like, man, why are you wanting to play this? But the reality is this card does a few things that Quell doesn't do. Quell being a triggered ability, and Helios Miter being an active ability allows you to do some interesting things with it. Like you can stack the activations to like get around a dominate, or to get around, not that there's many dominates in the set, but to get around dominate, or to get around, a big stack of arcane damage or something like that. Though it's inefficient, it's still an interesting way to deal with damage, tall damage in that sense. But I think the more interesting thing about Helios Miter is that it can be an excellent resource sink and hand fixer. You're always going to, being that it's in the token slot and is available to every pool in limited Uprising, you always have access to it. On your opponent's turn, if you're Dromai, you can turn 0, pitch to it to make a bunch of ash, fix your hand. Fi, same thing. You can fix your hand. Even Icelander, you can fix your hand if you're stuck going second. I think Helios Miter has a lot more use cases than people realize at this point, and I think for that reason, it's going to be a very powerful card for Uprising Limited.
Absolutely, I think the addition of a token level equipment in sealed and draft is super important. Equipment has always come at a premium, and to know that you won't have to go without some form of damage prevention in the game, I think it's a great call by LSS.
Yeah, exactly. Fourth on my list, I've got the new wizard weapon, the Waning Moon. I like this card for so many reasons. Saying moon for 2 or moon for 3 alone is just excellent. But Waning Moon, wizard weapon staff, token rarity, 2-handed, and reads once per turn instant, 2 resources, deal 2 arcane damage to target hero, or if it's not your turn, instead deal 3 arcane damage to them, and activate this ability only if you've played a non-attack action card this turn. So this card, this weapon, very interesting design space. I think it lends itself as a better tempo tool than potentially Kraken does. You don't necessarily get the same payoff Kraken has, but to be able to thread in, an extra 2 arcane damage on your turn or 3 arcane damage on their turn, if you're able to get into that really specific tempo case, I think Waning Moon's going to see a lot of play in a lot of different wizard builds to start with, and Kano is I don't know if Kano wants this, but Icelander.
Is it a wizard? It's not an ice wizard. It's a
No,
wizard
it's
weapon.
just wizard weapon. So
Oh
Kano
man.
can play it. I don't know if Kano. I don't think Kano wants. Well, no, Aether Wildfire Kano doesn't. Aether Wildfire Kano still wants Crucible. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you really have to do a different type of wizard build on Kano to really capitalize on Waning Moon. I feel like because that that Aether Wildfire build really wants to just stack that damage over the over the AV. It feels like with the Crucible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, Waning Moon. I'm excited about it. I'm curious to see what builds it's going to slot into. Moving on to my my last card on my list, and I hummed and hawed over this one, jumped around between a few different cards, and in reality, all these cards are kind of interesting sideboard cards. I think at most. I was back and forth between Erase Face, Vipox, and Fog Down. But I think I want to talk about Erase Face a little bit. This is a generic M. 2 for 6, pitches for red, blocks for 2. And it reads, when Erase Face hits a hero, cards and tokens they own lose all class and talent types until the end of their next turn. And when I first read this card, I really had to kind of wrap my head around what that on hit clause meant. But the reality is it shuts off so many things, fusion cards. You can't fuse anymore. Like let's say example,
nothing is ice, right?
Nothing is talented whatsoever. Let's say in a boost mech deck, all of a sudden your mech cards aren't mech cards, so you can't boost you can't successfully boost anymore.
Yep.
In Wizard, if you're trying to go in, Kano's trying to go in for the kill off of Stormstriders, all of a sudden their Wizard cards aren't Wizard cards anymore. They can't activate half of the stuff, like Sonic Boom doesn't matter, Lessons in Lava doesn't tutor. There's a ton of things that stop working in Kano if Erase Face hits. I think Erase Face is one of those cards that I find with a lot of really impactful Flesh and Blood cards, they're always really subtle. It's at first you read it and you're like Crown of Seeds, for example. I never expected Crown of Seeds to be as impactful as it ended up becoming. And I do wonder if Erase Face could become one of those that, just interesting tech cards for shutting down reveal effects, or just there's probably so many use cases for it that we can't even think of yet.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a great tech card. I think it's gonna there's more illusionists. It loses your cards aren't can't get go again if you're Prism. Right, your illusionist attacks never exist. Yep. And there's a million cases right there. Every hero has cards that care about what it's doing like that, and you're just out of luck if you get hit with Erase Face.
Yeah. Though I will say, to go back to me humming and hawing over what card I actually wanted for my fifth card, the flavor text on Vipox is very tasteful. It's a quote, only fools resort to force, and then the quote, the person being quoted is the spider, and then the art is this guy with this, it's almost like an Oni mask or whatever, and he's clearly poisoning a tea or something like that. And I don't know, there's a lot of flavor going on there. I mean, there's a lot of flavor going on Erase Face as well, with just the art, that's mind-bending art.
It just I punched someone so hard I broke the space-time continuum on their face.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know. Is he punching him? Is he like casting a spell or something?
He's just he is erasing his face with a fist. That is what is happening there.
One capacity or another. But that's my list, or I guess my list of there's so many interesting cards in Uprising. I'm so excited for this set. I know we've already been kind of dabbling in it for a couple weeks, but like I'm so excited to draft it. I'm so excited to see what comes out of constructed decks. This set I think is going to be a hit in a way that definitely Tails wasn't.
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot more in here for a lot of different heroes. Like Erase Face, that's going to go in Brute because it's a 6 attack.
Yeah.
A little depressing that the Majestic 6 attack doesn't block for 3. There has also been talk of Brothers in Arms, the blue, being potentially popular in at least Oldham. But it might be a Guardian card moving forward. Oldham can definitely use the ability to defend with that, pitch another blue, and now you have Brothers, Crown, and Rampart paid for with one card, right? You have that resource that would otherwise be floating. Now you have another defensive thing to sink it into, which is just what Oldham needed.
Just more defense that he can resource. Yeah,
more defense. All right, let's wrap it up then. We'll take care of some plugs here. You can find the Combat Chain at our YouTube channel, the Combat Chain Podcast. You can find us streaming on all audio platforms where available. You can support us on our Patreon. Available in the links below. We basically asking 1 year, come support us. We're working on scaling up our Patreon content. Coming up as we speak, yours truly is working on the beginnings of another long deck guide. You will likely see a condensed version on YouTube and an extended version on our Patreon. So something to look forward to there. You can also help support the podcast by using our TCG Player affiliate link when you are buying your cards for Uprising, coming out in the US July 1 and everywhere else June 24th, which is at the end of the week. So that'll be very interesting to see. I think that does it. You can find the Combat Chain Podcast on Twitter at the Combat Chain. You can find myself at Pat Smashgood, and you can find Adam at Fom Tuileries TCG. So that's gonna do it for this episode, and until next week, we're closing the Combat Chain. Smooth.